Metagenics gets to the root of whole body health with pure, potent ingredients sourced from nature, clinically tested and trusted by doctors for decades. And unlike some other supplements, Metagenics is scientifically designed to be completely absorbed and start working in as little as 45 minutes, bringing your body back into balance for lasting well-being. Nourish your systems, don't just manage your symptoms, and unleash your inner power to heal. Metagenics, the science that creates balance.
Hello and welcome to the Made Fit Show. Today we have an incredible guest who's on a mission to empower women to reclaim their health and happiness. Meet Holly Bertone, a former FBI, yes, I said that, former FBI Chief of Staff of Counterintelligence who has made a remarkable transformation into certified holistic health coaching. With 2 decades of experience in high-stakes government roles, Holly knows a thing or two about managing pressure and navigating challenges. Now, after her own journey with emotional eating, she discovered that overcoming food struggles is much like tracking down spies. It's all about identifying patterns and neutralizing threats. Now, Holly dedicates her life to helping high-achieving midlife women break free from emotional eating and rebel against diet culture, all without restrictive diets or the need of sheer willpower. Now, her science-backed approach has garnered attention on major platforms and top podcasts. And today she's here to share her insights and strategies to help women fuel their bodies for optimal energy and health. Let's dive in and learn from Holly's experience and her inspiring journey.
Yay!
I only fumbled those words like once.
I do all that.
Holly.
I actually, like Holly, I don't know if you're at this. I mean, I'm 51. Lauren is 45. And
I'm 53.
53. I can't see my own writing on my computer right now. I'm like, I came up here and I'm like, I don't have my glasses. I'm glad Lauren read that.
We need longer arms.
Good to have you here today. And this is great timing because I just had one of my weight loss patients last week kind of have an emotional breakdown because she's hit a plateau and she started regaining weight and some old patterns that had been not present kind of snuck back. So this is great timing, but it's really happy. I'm really happy to have you here. And I think our audience is really going to be excited to hear this podcast.
Oh yeah. And thank you so much, ladies, for having me on the Made Fit Show. I'm excited to be here and yeah.
Absolutely. So I have to ask, what made you switch? I mean, that's kind of the obvious question that I'm sure everyone wants to know and always ask you.
Absolutely. And I definitely want to get into my story. But before I do, I just really want to say how much I admire the work that you ladies have done on this podcast, because it is so important to get this message out there, and especially women who are our age as well. So to everyone listening, please leave a review. Please leave a 5-star review, because that is going to help this podcast reach so many more people. I left a review. It hasn't showed up yet, but I did leave the review. So if everyone else could do that as well, that would mean a lot to me as a guest. So, and I know everyone's curious because how I went from FBI counterintelligence to a health coach who specializes in emotional eating, because it doesn't make sense, but it will, I promise. But your listeners may have been in this place where they've asked themselves, how can I be smart and successful and capable and high achieving? I've risen to the ranks of my career. I'm crushing it with my family. I'm a pillar of the community because of things like systems and habits and discipline and strategies. But when it comes to losing weight, none of that works. But even more so than that, it's this uncontrollable food noise, these obsessive cravings. I've had so many of the women I work with, they tell me it starts from the second they wake up and it goes to the time they go to bed. And then it's just this mindless snacking around the cravings. And so many women do what they think is healthy. And it doesn't matter if you're overweight or you're at a healthy weight. When these floodgates open, there's no turning back. Yeah. And I know what it's like. And I'm always a little bit hesitant to admit this, because I am a recovered emotional eater of over 40 years. Mm-hmm. And there is some shame, there's some stigma around that. So I do want to be, even though I'm a little ashamed to admit it, I do want to be bold with that, because I know that this story is going to help so many women. And I was overweight. At one point, I weighed 150 pounds. There was also a time in my life where I was 110 pounds. I was a competitive mountain bike racer,
Wow.
but I would eat my emotions daily. And I'll give you a perfect example of this. When I was at the FBI, I would take, and this was daily, I would take a family-sized bag of M&Ms and peanut, of course, because we got to get our protein in.
Of course.
Of course. And I would color code them. And then I would speed eat them with my left hand. And I would crank out PowerPoint decks with my right. So that was how I cooked. That was how I used food. And that was just one example. But fast forward is really where I want to share my story. And again, I feel like this is embarrassing to admit. And I can't believe I'm going to share with this, but this was after I had already resigned from the FBI and I had already become a health coach. And every Thursday, I would start obsessing about Friday because Friday was my treat day. And I would be healthy and disciplined Monday through Friday. I mean, completely 100% healthy. And then that weekend, it was the treats are on. And your listeners might relate if they've been pulled in just a million different directions throughout the week with the career and the family. And that comfort food is just quiet. It's like when you're eating the pizza and the ice cream and the cookies and the cupcakes, it just takes the edge off. And that's really how I felt. But my reward, my favorite reward, I'm a Pennsylvania girl, so I like the sweet salty thing. So my favorite reward was a pint of salted caramel ice cream. And then I would do a batch of homemade popcorn on the stove. So, and I told myself, okay, this is what went on in my head. I told myself I'm going to have an entire pint over the weekend, which I think is pretty fair. A third on Friday, a third on Saturday, and a third on Sunday. Okay. Like in my head, that's how it went down. Well, what happened was, and I mean, think about it. It's like everything in moderation. But what happened was I would take that first bite and I'd take that second bite and I just, savor it and the mindful eating and just all the yumminess. And the next thing I knew, my spoon was scraping the bottom of the container. And that was Friday. So of course, because I had several in the freezer, I'd have another pint on Saturday and then another pint on Sunday. And every weekend, it was the same thing. I would eat 3 pints of ice cream, and then I would go back. I would be 100% disciplined. I would be that disciplined health coach Monday through Friday afternoon. But there was this one Sunday, and this was kind of the rock bottom of my emotional eating because I was finishing that third pint of ice cream. And it wasn't even, I don't know, when you're eating out of the container and you got to move the spoon so that you can get that chocolate that's in the groove.
Definitely.
That was rock bottom. And it actually tasted a little bit more like cardboard and a less like chocolate and ice cream. But I'm trying to get those last few bites. And I thought to myself at that moment, and I'm staring at another empty container. And I'm like, why do I always eat the entire thing? Why can't I just eat a few bites like a normal person? And that shame that I felt was suffocating because again, I'm a health coach. I should know better. I should be a better example. But I didn't want to face the truth because I justified it because I was a healthy weight. I worked hard all week and I deserved a treat. And maybe our listeners can relate that they've been on this path where they're just putting on these appearances to the outside world. Like, I've got it all together and the smiles and saying the right things. But behind closed doors, like you're just an epic hot mess and you don't want anyone to find out. You don't want anyone to know your secret. And that's a secret that I kept for way too many years. So I went upstairs and I walked into my walk-in closet and I did a 360. And I looked at all the clothes that I absolutely love, but that I didn't wear anymore because they were tight. They were uncomfortable, right? Even just those few extra pounds. And I'd put them on and they just were just tight enough that they didn't fit right. And in that moment, I went back to when I was 40 pounds overweight. and how much I hated feeling that way and feeling those tight clothes and just hating how fat I looked in the mirror. And then I went back to that place when I was dealing with breast cancer and an autoimmune disease and what those two diseases did to my body. And I hated how much I couldn't even look in the mirror to look at myself. And I vowed that I was never going to go back to that place again. So I made a decision, and that was something needed to change. And that was a hard truth because, again, I was a healthy weight. So for those of you listening, like, it doesn't matter the weight. If you're struggling with emotional eating, that food noise is always going to win. And that's when I realized it wasn't just me, that so many women in midlife, they're battling the same kind of, you've got the demanding lifestyle and you've got the food noise, and then you've got the shame attached to it. And that's when I became obsessed. And I, no longer working for the FBI, but I put the FBI hat back on. And I was like, okay, I uncovered what the weight loss industry doesn't want us to know, because it's more than the calories and the cardio and the weight. And it's even more than the food. It's addressing those root cause triggers, those automatic eating patterns that are driving our behaviors. And the patterns control everything. So in order for things to change, you've got to rewrite the patterns to work in your favor. So that's when everything clicked for me. And that was when everything clicked for the women who I coach as well. And I really like to say too, as a coach is, and I know you ladies appreciate the value of an education, and I continue to educate myself every day. And I've got pieces of paper on the wall that say I'm certified to coach. But everything that I'm going to share today and everything that I do and teach and coach, it was built on the food monsters that I overcame personally. It was built on very specific skills that I gained in FBI counterintelligence. We're talking analyzing patterns. We're talking countering threats. And then I combined that with the brain science of neuroplasticity. And that's when things just started to really take off.
Fascinating. In my very humble opinion, number one, thank you for being so vulnerable. I know that's hard to do. And I'm going to share a story with you in honor of you being so vulnerable that I have never shared with anybody before. So give me just one second. But I feel like you just put your arms out and gave so many women such a huge hug because what you said was so relatable. And I know Dr. Lauren can, nod her head as well, working with clients and patients, that how often we hear the shame that goes along with, I do so good Monday through Friday, but come Friday evening, and even with me still to this day, Lauren, we did pretty good, but Lauren was in Mexico with me not long ago. But I've been having guest after guest. And when I don't have my patterns or my habits, my discipline is so much less than when it's just me and Mick, and I had the opportunity to follow my routine. It's crazy how food talks to me more and all of that stuff. But let me share my story real fast. And I have to tell my mom this. So my mom and my sister both, so I was probably 16-ish when my mom and my sister got on fen-phen. And because my mom and my sister had some weight to lose. And all of my girlfriends in high school, I had one curvy Latino girlfriend. She had, cute little booty, tiny little waist. And then the other two were 100 pounds soaking wet. They were just super, super tiny. And I was average. I wasn't overweight by any means, but I was average. And my mom and my sister would get their prescription for fen-phen. And every time they would get it, I would sneak in the bottle and I would grab a couple of them and, hide them and use them. And I remember my mom confronting me once. She goes, I never have enough. She says, honey, are you taking my pills? I'm like, no, Mom, I'm not taking. Why would I take your pills? I'm not taking your pills. But back then, way back then, because I had a hard time controlling, my food, because my mom showed her love with food. I had you talk about the M&Ms. I had big bags of Doritos, and I would sit down and drink my Coke and eat my big bag of Doritos and play my Super Mario Brothers and all that stuff. So controlling that was very difficult because of the lack of nutrition I had in my life. And so these pills were going to be the answer for me. So I thought about that the other day, and I'm like, oh my gosh, people probably think, because for so long I've been a pretty healthy girl and eating very well and exercising, you've never struggled. You never had any issues. I used to steal my mom's diet pills.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
I have a feeling that a lot of our listeners are like, oh yeah, I can relate with that.
Oh, yeah.
For sure. For sure.
Yeah.
And Melissa, you brought up a really good point is, our mothers, that's how we grew up. It was unknowing. We were rewarded with food, and that's how we reward our kids. That's how we reward our grandkids. It's unknowing, but that's all that we know. And this is also not just a chance for us to look within, but for us to really break that pattern within our families.
But
and
here's
to break
the thing.
that legacy.
I'm on the other side. My mom grew up, my grandmother, may she rest in peace. She was a wonderful woman, but she was very hard on my mom and her sisters, and weight was always an issue that she basically put on her daughters. And so when my mom had me, my mom was like, I swear I'm not going to give my daughter the same issues. So I'd never had that, but I think it's growing up, in the 80s and the 90s, that's when all of the artificial stuff and the fat free and all of that. And I really think that we underestimate the power that those chemicals that are put in food by food scientists that literally study the bliss point to get you to that point where you're like, I have to eat the whole package, or, you can't just have 3 Oreos. You're going to eat the whole sleeve. Like there's literally scientists behind it trying to figure out how to get you to that place that you're constantly thinking about. I mean, it's legal drugs, right? That's how illegal drugs work on our brains, but these are legal drugs that are being put in our food. So I think we underestimate the power that goes to rewiring the brain, and we have to undo that rewiring with the neuroplasticity and create those new patterns so we break free from those old patterns.
Absolutely. 100%. The food chemists, they know exactly what to put in the foods. And, and I was thinking when you're sharing that, I was thinking back to the snack wells and the 100 packs. Well, the 100 packs are great because, quote unquote, everything in moderation, and it's just 100 calories. But when you eat the entire box rather than the 100 calories, that's a whole different story.
Absolutely. And that happened every time. I mean, I could never just have one 100 calorie snack snack.
Yeah.
Nope.
So what made you transition from being an FBI agent to a holistic health coach?
It was when, so I was diagnosed with breast cancer in 2010. So I'm actually coming up on my 15th year survivorversary. And then I was diagnosed with an autoimmune disease a year later. So I went on my own personal healing journey, and because my health had actually gotten so bad that I just had to resign. Like I was not healthy. The autoimmune disease, it was Hashimoto's, and it kicked me to the curb. The chronic fatigue was really bad. So I was in a place where I was on that journey to heal myself and to really, from a holistic perspective, all the doctors gave up on me. So it just made sense for me to resign because I physically just couldn't work. And jumping into the health coaching and really looking at it from the holistic perspective was really important, the mind, body, spirit, and realizing it's not just the food, it's our thoughts. And it's even just those patterns of victimhood. I mean, I was knee deep in victimhood, and just even rewiring that to saying I have absolute control over my body.
Yep.
And the thoughts, the food, the everything that goes in.
The analogy that I give to my functional medicine patients that have autoimmunity, it's like, it's the perfect recipe for disaster. So imagine like a witch's brew. You have a little bit of this ingredient, a little bit of that, and a little bit of that. And then finally, the one magic ingredient that poof makes it the magical brew oftentimes is a stressful event, but we have, food that is not the greatest. We have, maybe you were born via C-section. Maybe you've had a history of lots of antibiotics. Maybe you went through divorce. Maybe you have a really high stress job like an FBI agent. And then all of a sudden you get pregnant and boom, autoimmunity genes turn on and your body is attacking whatever, you were attacking your thyroid, but we've got rheumatoid arthritis attacking joints and all of the things. But what you don't realize, and you don't hear from Western medical doctors, is that 90% of the agents that turn on the autoimmune are actually in your control, and you can reverse that. You can never cure your autoimmunity, but you can definitely take control and reverse that stuff.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, autoimmune patients are the ones that I feel like are disserviced in our Western medical world.
Yeah, 100%. And I realized it was really great to be in that place where I could reverse all of the symptoms. My hair is thick and strong. I've got abundant energy, consistent energy throughout the day. I mean, it's great to live like a normal person, to have that energy. I mean, people say I look like I'm in my mid-30s and I'm 53. So, yeah. I mean, just even that, I'm not cold anymore. I was freezing cold all of the time, but the energy, I mean, just living life like a normal person. I mean, that in and of itself was yeah. So
I always say thyroid is like nature's caffeine. And if you're not making enough of it, you're going to be tired, you're going to be cold, you're going to be carrying extra weight, all of the things.
Yeah, 100%.
It's funny, this is totally off topic, but I had a girlfriend here and she takes thyroid medication, Lauren, and we're talking about it. And I said, do you take your thyroid with distilled water? And she said, no. And I'm like, girl.
I can't take it with water that has minerals or electrolytes in it. Otherwise, you're not absorbing the whole dose.
Yeah. So for all of you out there, if you're on thyroid medication, Dr. Lauren has taught me, which now I share with other people, is it's best to take it with distilled water, which she was not told that. So simple things. I mean, it's like taking, ox bile for having your gallbladder removed. Some of those simple things are just not shared in common practice, common knowledge, and it's so important.
Mm-hmm. All right. So let's talk about some myths and wellness. So there's so many misconceptions about health and wellness that are out there. What are some of the biggest myths that you have encountered that you believe hold women back from reaching their health goals?
Yeah. And I think specifically to emotional eating, we're looking at, and I even talked about a little bit this in my story, is we're looking at everything in moderation. We're looking at mindful eating, and we're looking at willpower. And do these work? Yes, sometimes. Are these modalities that I practice personally? Yes, sometimes. Okay. So this isn't an A or B, black or white kind of answer. But from what I found is that they work when you're on the other side of emotional eating. When you're in that place and the food is controlling you and it's obsessive and you've got those cravings, that the moderation, the mindful eating, the willpower. I mean, we just talked about the snack balls. Like you eat, there's no moderation. You eat the entire box. So it gets thrown out the window. And I think there's several reasons. And here's really where I want the listeners to really think about is there was some research done at MIT, and they found that the moment a craving hits, that your brain has already made the decision that you're going to eat the thing. And it happens in less than half of a second. I mean, we can't even count half of a second. That's how fast it is. And dopamine is such a big piece of this puzzle. And we think of dopamine like the reward chemical. We think puppies, we think babies, right? Like we're happy when we're around them. And same with food. But what most people don't understand is dopamine is actually the anticipation chemical, in as much as it's the reward chemical. So we're getting that dopamine hit from the anticipation of the food. And that's why the cravings feel so automatic and so obsessive, is because in that less than half of a second, your brain has already told you that you're getting rewarded for this food before it even touches your lips. And your listeners can think about it this way, because when you wake up in the morning, and yes, I mean, my clients say they have the cravings 24/7, but if you really, really think about it, when you wake up in the morning, first thing in the morning, on a scale of 1 to 10, where are your cravings? It's probably going to be a 5 or under. But at the end of the night, after dinner, you're on the couch watching Netflix, where are those cravings? It's probably like an 8 or a 9 or a 10, right? And there was a gentleman, there was a researcher by the name of Baumeister. I think it was around the late 90s. And he had the ego depletion study and the ego depletion theory. And what they found was that the more decisions that we make during the day, the weaker our ability to resist cravings. And especially as women, especially women in midlife, how many thousands of decisions do we make in every aspect of our life the entire day?
Yep.
So no wonder, that late afternoon, that evening after dinner, watching Netflix, this is when it is the absolute strongest. So again, it's the everything in moderation, it's the willpower, and it is the mindful eating. So once you're on the other side of emotional eating, I think they work. I think they're great modalities. But until then, if this is all that you're relying on, those food cravings are always going to win.
100%.
So then the question is, how do you get past the emotional eating?
Yeah. Oh, I'm glad you asked that. So I've got a 3-step process that I would love to share.
Let's
Jeez.
hear it. I love it.
So, but first, I really want to just kind of set the stage, because we talk about rewiring your brain. You guys just had Melissa Vogel on your show, which is just such a great interview. So if you geeked out with her episode, you're going to geek out here. And I like to think about it because people are like, oh, what am I doing? I'm rewiring my brain. That sounds so weird. And I like to think about it of like parallel parking. So I grew up in Pennsylvania. I grew up in the country. So I never had to parallel park my car. It was a skill that I never learned. So fast forward, when I don't even remember how old, but fast forward, I moved to Alexandria, Virginia, right about when I turned 30. So there, it's right outside of DC. So there's a lot of parallel parking. So I was that girl who would drive around the block, park 10 blocks away, because I did not know how to parallel park. In fact, the night that my ex-husband and I met, and I was driving, and I stopped the car, we got out, we switched spots, and he parallel parked for me. I mean, that's how embarrassing it was. Well, in 2021, I bought a Hyundai Kona. And ladies, do you want to know what a Hyundai Kona has in it? A brand new Hyundai Kona? It has a parking camera. Do you want to know what parking cameras do? You can parallel park with a parking camera, with a backup camera, right? So for 30 some years, I was not able to parallel park because I did not have that skill. And nor did I choose to get that skill. I did not choose to practice. I did not choose to learn. That was on me. But all of a sudden, I have a backup camera. So I didn't change. I just have a new tool that allowed me to parallel park. And that's exactly what rewiring the brain is that it's a new tool. You are the same person, but what we're doing is we're taking those things that have sabotaged you in the past, and it's like a coin. We're just flipping the coin. So now all of a sudden, instead of them sabotaging you, they're now your gifts. And we're just changing that trajectory. So, but it's also, in addition to the science of neuroplasticity, I also like to combine that with FBI tactics, specifically counterintelligence tactics, because I love the science of neuroplasticity and brain rewiring works, but we all know something big happens, life happens, and it is so easy to go back to those patterns. So when you have those real life tactical countermeasures and the tactics to interrupt that pattern in real life, when the two of them are combined, that's really when it's a game changer. So, and I like to think about the 3 steps like a path in the woods. So when we look at neuroplasticity, your brain, in all of its decades of wiring from growing up in the 70s and 80s and 90s, and the stuff that our parents, told us, and the culture and the diet culture and all of the thing, we have decades of these patterns that are ingrained. And this is a well-worn path in the woods. So I want you to think, when I talk about the 3 steps, I want you to think about it like that well-worn path in the woods. So step 1 is called see it. And that's where we really focus on the FBI inspired pattern analysis. So I go back to my pattern analysis days. Why are those patterns there? What are the triggers? What is causing those triggers? What's behind the emotional eating, so that you can understand why you reach for food when the stress hits? because we can go out and we could just jump in a diet, or jump into a diet, and it may or may not work. I mean, I think the research says like 92% of diets fail. And that's why, because we're not taking that step back and saying, okay, what got us here in the first place? But here's the thing, is that we have to, so step one is see it. So we have to get out our gloves and our work boots. That new path doesn't just appear out of nowhere. Okay, we actually have to get out our gloves and our work boots, and we are going to clear a new path. And what is in that new path? There's thorns, there's rocks, there's overgrown, there's snakes, there's spiders, right? You think about a path in the woods, like that is exactly what we're doing. That is exactly what we're clearing out in the brain. And while we're doing that, right, is understanding why these patterns happen. I talked about the ego depletion theory, right? Why do these patterns happen late at night? Well, because we're making a million decisions during the day. And I'll give you a perfect example of this. So I was last year, I had a speaking event at MIT, and I was flying from Reagan National to Boston. And I was on a super tight deadline to get from point A to point B. So anyway, so the individuals, so they had a 3-hour delay, but it was one of those 3-hour delays that was every 20 to 30 minutes. They're telling us it's going to be delayed another 30 minutes.
Been there, done that.
Yeah. So I just have my laptop and I'm there and I'm working but I'm watching. The psychology and major in me is watching everyone. The FBI and analyst of me is watching everyone. And it was interesting because you had one group of people who would go up to the counter and they would yell at the agent because the flight was delayed. I mean, hello, it's not like they can't do anything. You had another group of people and they went to Dunkin' Donuts and they got their bags of bagels and donuts and they just sat there and they ate. And you had a third group of people. They went to the bar and they're drinking and they're staring at their phone. And this is at 8:00 in the morning. So that is exactly what this is see it, is I could see this because I was detached.
Right.
I was detached and I could see these patterns play out. You have this trigger. The flight is delayed. We wouldn't be getting on an airplane if we didn't have somewhere important to go. So we're now going from point A to point B, right? So we need to get to that place. So we're having these fight, flight, freeze, and fawn responses. So I could actually see this play out in real life. And I'll give you another one from my own journey. I was talking about going through breast cancer treatment. And when, so this was 2010. So I was working at the FBI. So what I would do is I would drive to work and I'd work a few hours in the morning and then I would drive across town. I'd go get poison injected in me for 4 hours, go sit through chemo. And then I would drive across town. I would go pick up my stepson from school. And you want to know what we did on the way home? We stopped at Dairy Queen because I wanted a Blizzard. Now, I had this disgusting metal taste in my mouth. I was ready to throw up. I was so nauseous. So, I mean, a normal person, like, okay, why would you want a Blizzard if that's what you feel? But it was that emotional, it was to numb everything about that day.
Yep. That
it was a difficult day. And I don't think anyone would deprive me of a Dairy Queen Blizzard after going through that kind of day. And you think about it, it was work, stressful job, chemo, stepmother duty. And, shout out to fellow stepmothers out there to, be a parent without the, without the other stuff. And, so, and I want your listeners to really think about that from their own perspective is we have these hard days. No one would ever say that you don't deserve a treat or you don't deserve to reward yourself or you didn't do amazing, great, powerful, courageous, brave things. But food does not always have to be that comfort and that consult. So that's step one. See it.
Nice.
Yeah.
I like that analogy because that's something applicable to, you've got a long path that's already there, or you can create your own path that's a lot shorter and better option for you, but you have to work for it.
Yeah,
it doesn't just happen on its own.
Absolutely.
Okay, what's step two?
And actually that brings up another good point that I really want to share before I get into step 2 is we think of these quick fix diets.
Mhm.
And I think so, and especially again, the 80s, thank you 80s diet culture, they've ruined us for life.
Forever.
But we walk into the diet or the weight loss, and we think of it like the perspective of when you're at the grocery store and you see they've got one line that's open and there's, 5, 6, 7 people. So you go to the self-checkout because it's going to be, you could just jump right in, do your thing and leave. And you're checking out your groceries and you're like, bam, 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 you're scanning. And then all of a sudden it says undetected item in baggage area or bagging area. Right. And you get that flashing, and then you get the red light of shame that's going off. But the cashier is nowhere around. So you're looking, you're like, do I leave my groceries? Do I go find her? So you finally find her. She comes over and then she helps the other person with the red blinking light. And you're like, wait a second, my light was blinking first. Why can't I go first? Why are you helping someone else first? And then she finally comes over, gets you checked out. And you know how when you're in those lines and you kind of have that little competition going on, like you're eyeing up the person that's parallel to you, and you're eyeing them up and you're like, am I going to get out before they, or they get out before me? And you're seeing that person who you were parallel with, they're already out the door.
They won.
They totally won. And that is exactly how we go into the diet, thinking I'm going to take the self-checkout lane. But you've got life just happens. Life gets lifey. You've got these triggers every day. It's, hello 50s. I can't find my keys. I can't find my glasses. Yeah. My keys are in my pocket. My glasses are on my head. I can't find them. And, you get in an argument with your spouse, or your dog poops on your carpet, or your spouse poops on the carpet. I mean, something is always going to happen. That life gets lifey. And that is exactly when, I love to say that I can predict with, and I just jokingly say 87% accuracy. It's pretty much 100% when someone's going to quit their diet. And that is the moment. There's two things. It's number one is the moment either the thing gets hard or the situation makes the thing hard. So either they're like, I don't want to, I'm starving myself and I can't maintain this. I don't want to go to the gym. My muscles hurt. It's raining outside, all the things. So the thing gets hard to do, or the situation, it's raining outside. I got in a fight with my spouse. I have to stay late at work, and all of the things that make it hard. So it's either the thing itself or the situation. That's when everyone quits. And that's what we have to remember. It's not just, it's not just the speed from point A to point B. This is a long-term strategy. Weight loss is a long-term, especially if you want it to be healthy and sustainable. It is going to take a minute. It is not the self-checkout lane.
You can't view it as a diet. It's truly, it has to be a lifestyle change.
100%.
You're not on a diet. Nope. You are reteaching your body how to fuel itself with actual real food.
100%. So yeah. So let's get into step 2, which is stop it. And this is where we learn the FBI inspired tactics to actually interrupt the cycle in real time. So this is when you stop the cravings before they take over. This is when we hit that before that dopamine, before that half of a second. And this is without willpower. So when you think about back to that path in the woods, so you've got your old path that is worn, that is familiar. Your brain is like, I like this path. I don't care what it's like. I like this path because it's familiar. But now you're making a new path, but the new path isn't quite formed yet. You're still working on it. So you have to remind your brain when you come to that fork in the road, you have to remind your brain, don't go down the old familiar path because that's the path you love. We're now going down this new path. So what I like to do is implement what are called countermeasures. We did this in FBI counterintelligence. They're called countermeasures. And basically, they're strategic actions that are designed to prevent the threat before it actually happens. So in the context of emotional eating, your listeners are probably like, okay, Holly, what? So in the context of emotional eating, what these are, they're simply tactical interventions. So they are going to intercept the craving before the craving takes over.
Love it.
And the way that I like to think about it, and especially I know you guys are like, okay, you got FBI, you've got emotional eating, but here's the thing. This is the way I like to look at it, because you've got Russian spies, you've got cake day at the office, or donut day in the break room, right? A threat is a threat. It doesn't matter.
That's true.
It's the exact same thing to counter the threat.
You just compared a Russian spy to Cake Day.
Yeah, pretty much.
The Red
And
Room.
and better if it's Costco Cake Day, because you can like smell that buttercream. Yeah. You know you're an emotional eater when you say that you're going to be good, you're not going to have that piece of Costco sheet cake, and everyone's passing it around. You can just smell that buttercream frosting, and you're like, I'm going to take a small bite. I'm not going to have any, or I'm going to take something small. And then you get the quarter piece because that's got the most icing. And then you're wishing that no one was around so that you could, instead of just scraping your fork on the plate to get the last bit of frosting, you wishing like no one was around so you could actually lick the plate.
Totally.
And I'm saying this as, raising my hand front in line that I have definitely done that. So yeah, the cake day in the office is a definite threat.
All right, we have step 1 and step 2. What's step 3?
So hang on. So this is where we talked about the dopamine. So this is where the dopamine is like training. It's like training a puppy. And I get a pug. Shout out to any pug owners out there. They're the best dogs ever. But I got it. It was a pandemic puppy. We got the pug in 2020. And his name is Hannibal because I thought that would be funny because the whole FBI thing.
Yes.
So, but I mean, puppies, right? They're going to pee on the carpet. They're going to bite everything. They're going to chew on the chair legs. This is their natural tendencies. So what do? You get the treat, right? And as they're going for the thing, you interrupt them with the treat. And then now he's what, almost 5. So he doesn't have any of those behaviors. He doesn't chew, he doesn't bite, he doesn't pee on the floor, he does anything. And when he wants to go potty, he actually rings a little bell and I let him out to go potty. So that is exactly what we're doing with our brain. And we've got these big emotions that we're dealing with, these big patterns that have been ingrained in us for decades. But what happens, it's like, you remember the Scooby-Doo shows and the villain takes the mask off? Really, that's all that this is. This is where we take the mask off Scooby-Doo's villain. And then all of a sudden, it's just a big emotion in a trench coat. And you're like, oh, that's it. And we're starting to neutralize it. So that's step 1 and step 2.
I love it.
These are good.
Okay, so step 3, this is called shift it. And this is where we rewire the automatic responses. This is really the powerhouse of creating that healthier, effortless relationship with food that lasts, that you can be around food. And here's what I see all of the time is that, and the women listening might be able to relate to this, is that you say, like, I'm going to go on a diet. And then you tell everyone in the house, I'm going on a diet. You need to support me. Don't bring any junk food in the house. Right. And so what happens is that they listen for a few days. And then the next thing you know, your spouse or your kids, they've got the cupcakes or the cookies on the counter. So what happens? You eat the cupcakes or the cookies. And then what happens? You get upset at yourself. So you yell at them because they brought it into the house. And this is the shift it is really that place where it doesn't matter. You can have the cupcakes on the counter. You can have the cookies on the counter. You can have the cake day at the office. You can have the donuts in the office. And you're not going to have that food noise. You're not going to have those cravings. You can be around it and it has no power over you. So for me, again, my big thing was ice cream. I have ice cream in the freezer because I do some Instagram reels that require ice cream as a prop. And I've even had I have not had sugar in over a year, but in terms of just a prop for Instagram, sometimes I have had a bite, for that, Instagram reel, and it does nothing. It does absolutely nothing. So this is where we're at. If you're thinking, okay, what does this actually mean? Where are we actually going with this? So, but this is that path, that new path is now the shiny path. This is the familiar path. So your brain doesn't even notice the other path. The other path is old. The other path is now gross. The other path is now starting to get overgrown. Your new path is the only path that your brain wants to take. Your brain chooses it automatically. And there was a great study. It was the London taxi cab driver study. I don't know if either of you are familiar with this. And the reason I love this study was it was done in the year 2000. And do you know what we did not have in 2000? We did not have GPS, Garmin, smartphones, none of that. It was our brains and a map that folded out. Well, what they did was they researched taxi drivers in London. And what they had to do to become a taxi cab driver, it was a rigorous training. They had to learn all the streets. And basically they had their brains and they had a map, and that was it. And that's how they learned. And when they looked at the hippocampus, which is responsible for memory and navigation, number one, the taxi cab drivers had larger hippocampi than the control group, number one. But then number two, the drivers who have been driving longer also had the bigger brain center. So, which says to us that, yes, our brains can actually change. And I love that study. And I really want to kind of finish off with sharing something that I think is going to be relatable to a lot of people is, you know, how if you have kids or grandkids, getting them to brush their teeth, it is like, oh my goodness, it is a daily, twice a day, and you're nagging and you're yelling and you're cajoling and you're bribing and all of the things. And my stepson, so I've been raising him since he was 5. He's 22 now. He's a grown adult. I'm a divorced empty nester at 53. So that is my life. I've got my pug. But when he was a little guy, he would take his toothbrush and run it under the faucet and was like, yes, I brushed my teeth, check my toothbrush. I mean, I'm sure that has happened before. I was like, no, let me smell your breath. And then I was like, oh God, no, definitely go brush your teeth. Right. It's yeah. So, but this is what we're like when we're kids. This is what our kids do. This is what our grandkids do. It's just a rite of passage. So at some point we become adults, but what do? Do we have Post-it notes on our bathroom mirror that say we're awesome, we're great, we're the best person in the world because we brush our teeth? Do we binge listen to podcast episodes and books on Audible about brushing our teeth? Right? Do we have apps on our phone going off and dinging and reminding us to brush our teeth? No, we just brush our teeth twice a day. At least hopefully most of us do. And that's exactly what this process does, is that, and you think of life like, oh, well, I went to a concert, so I'm getting home late. I'm still going to take the 60 seconds and brush my teeth. Or my alarm clock didn't go off and I'm running late for work. I'm still going to take that 60 seconds and I'm going to brush my teeth. So this is when it's not just the automatic, but it doesn't matter how life gets lifey. It is just a part of you. It is ingrained in you.
That's kind of, we've talked about this on the podcast before. And Lauren and I are big proponents for like habit stacking and stuff like that. So it looks like I froze.
You did freeze, but we can still hear you. Keep talking. You're good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Adam, you'll fix that, won't you? So the habit stacking, you want to, read a short devotion, put it next to your coffee pot, and read the devotion while you're pouring your coffee, something like that, to put those two together. I assume that's probably what do you incorporate that kind of a thing into these three?
That is one of the tactics I use. And it also kind of depends. So for example, I don't recommend, people talk about sleeping in your workout clothes. I don't recommend sleeping in a sports bra because it's going to, constrict your lymphatic system. So you kind of don't want to do that. I've heard that advice before, but other than that, like my workout clothes in the morning, they are right there. Second I wake up, they're right there, ready to put on. So so the habit stacking does work really well.
It's a big one for me, for sure. And are you the kind of person that puts, like, for your workouts, do you schedule them on a calendar so that they're, you don't let yourself down because it's an appointment for yourself? Those kind of things are. Yes,
my workouts are color coded on my Google Calendar. Although I do have to say, this week kind of threw me a little bit because I used to race in Xterra triathlon. So they were the off-road. I was a competitive mountain bike racer. And then I did some Xterra triathlons. And I'm just now getting back into running because I just was like, I don't need to run at this age. I can walk, I can lift heavy things. I don't have to run. And so I didn't. And for years and at least 10 years, if not, no, probably more than that, 10, 15 years. So I just got back into running. I'm mentoring with Go Girls Go, which I think is like Girls on the Run, but it's a 4th and 5th grade girls. So anyway, so we just started last week, but the running is different than my normal schedule because now I'm incorporating running in addition to the lifting. And I realized I can't lift in the morning and then go run in the afternoon and then walk the next day. So yeah, so I am shuffling a little bit this week, but it's great because I love it. I love mentoring the girls. It's so much fun.
Oh, it is. And the accountability, I'm sure, is next to none.
Yeah.
One thing I would love for you to share before we wrap this up is when I was going through your Instagram, and you guys can hit her Instagram up and find one of her reels, you talked about changing the way you say things, posturing them into a different way. Is there a couple that you can remember when you did that reel where this is what I used to say to myself, or this is what I want to say to myself, or this is what I did say to myself, turn it around to make it like this? I think a few of those examples would be great for the listeners to hear, to kind of have an idea of when you're in the moment, what you can say to yourself to help get past where you are.
Yeah, that's a great question, Melissa. And I'm actually going to turn this one around on something that you said. So, which is great. I have some notes that I did want to bring this up. So this is a perfect timing. Is that you had said at one point in one of your podcast episodes, you had shared about how much of an empath you are and how much you care about other people. And that is a great quality to have. And I know so many women that are, and self included, high on that empathetic scale. But when you talk about things like, okay, what's sabotaging me versus what is a gift? And we're the same person. So it's just two sides of the same coin, right? It's whether this is going to drain us or whether this is going to give us energy, whether it's going to push us down or lift us up. So when you think of being empathetic and you think of people pleasing and you think of, I don't want to say no to seconds because I don't want to hurt someone's feelings, or I don't want to say no to that glass of wine, or I don't want to say no to dessert, or, Aunt so-and-so made her special cookies just for me, and I feel obligated to eat them, right? And this obligation because we don't want to hurt people's feelings because we are so kind and compassionate and empathetic and people pleasing, but that's the downside of it. But what happens, you flip that coin, you're like, this is also my superhero power. And Melissa, you said something very powerful in that episode that I had listened to, and you had said that you don't put anything in your body that would not fuel it because you love your body that much. And you had equated that with how much empathy that you have for your own body. And that's really what we need to do and to think about is, so many women have these, where we are high empaths, we're people pleasers. We put other people's feelings before ourselves. And, it's great to be kind and considerate to other people, but we need to put our own selves first. We need to have that loving compassion and empathy and kindness for ourselves first and say, we're not going to hurt someone else's feelings if we say no to the seconds or, no to the dessert. And if we do hurt their feelings, that's on them. That's not on us.
Wow. I love that. Superpower.
So what's not going to hurt listeners' feelings is the free gift that you're offering. You said something about a free gift. Tell us more.
Yes. So thank you so much again for having me on the show. And I want to do something very special for your audience since you have stayed till the end of this episode. And so what I'm sharing with y'all, this is only for my paying clients. So you can't find this anywhere online. You can't go to my website. You can't get an opt-in. It's absolutely nowhere. And actually I've got two gifts. So before I dive in, let me explain who this is for. So this is for you if you are a high achieving woman in midlife and you can't control yourself around food. If you're stress eating, if you're mindlessly snacking, if you're hijacked by those cravings and by that food noise. So it's a bundle and it's called the Crime Scene Tactical Blueprint. And it's got two things in it. So the first gift, it's a personality and psychological analysis. It's really cool. So you're going to uncover your number one emotional and stress eating triggers. And it's got 3 childhood patterns that are going to, that you get to uncover the 3 childhood patterns that sabotage your progress. So you can actually understand what is driving those triggers. And then the second thing in the bundle is something, this is what I actually reserve it only for my clients. And this is where you are going to crack the code on emotional eating. So you're going to go from understanding the patterns. You're actually going to get the tactical tools to intercept those triggers, exactly what we talked about, to intercept the behaviors whenever they happen. And what's really cool, it's actually true crime style. So if you love true crime, the true crime podcast, or like the CSI and the Law and Order shows on TV, you're going to get totally geeked out with it. So no diets anywhere to be found. So
Love it.
so if you want the crime scene tactical blueprint bundle, and again, totally free. So as my thanks for listening, you can go to my Instagram and it's at holly.bertone, Bertone, holly.bertone. DM me the word blueprint and I will send it to you personally. No bots, just me. And so once again, if you want the crime scene tactical blueprint, totally free, go to holly.bertone on Instagram, Bertone, and DM me the word blueprint.
I hope we flood your
I
DM.
know.
That's a great gift. Thank you.
I'm
Thank
thinking
you.
about lots of patients right now that I'm like, I hope they listen to the end.
Thank you.
We appreciate you so much. And Melissa, is there anything else that you wanted to say before we wrap this up?
No, I do. I really appreciate how you took this incredible knowledge that you had for a former career and are able to put it into something that is so needed right now and in our present diet culture world, and to do it in such a sweet way. So thank you.
Yes, thank you. And thanks again for
Abs-
having me on the show.
We appreciate you so much. And Melissa, our
As
tagline?
always, we hope that you wake up feeling prepared and go to bed feeling proud. Have a great day. Thanks, Holly.
Thank you.